Nice location.
Hey, Andy.
Hey. I'm not outside.
I'm in a holler down in Carolina.
Oh, are you? Whereabouts?
No, I'm just
Oh.
teasing.
Oh, okay. Is that your back porch?
It's our front one.
Oh.
Actually, it's a condo complex we live in.
Nice. Looks nice.
Thank you. Yeah, this is it's at the northwest corner of West 19th and Arctic, down by Valley of the Moon,
Gotcha.
by Chester Creek.
Yeah, cool. As you can probably tell, I live over by Lake Hood.
I know you do. I saw that something on one of your posts or something. Yeah. You like to listen to that. You like to listen to that prop wash, don't you? Vroom.
You know,
from days gone past.
I don't know airplanes as well as my partner does, but he tells me that some of these pilots don't know how to actually like use their props and back off on the power a little bit so it's not so darn loud. And apparently there's other propellers that are not as loud as some of the propellers that are in use. But man, let me tell you, whew, they can be noisy. It hasn't been pre-pandemic when it was, there were tons and tons of tourists and planes would start taking off at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
It was, yeah, there was no staying in bed in the morning.
I know what you mean. I lived in Eliamna for a while, and of course I travel all over the state, or used to. I don't as much anymore. But I think I'd been in an airplane once when I lived in Montana.
Mm.
And of course, when I got out to Eliamna, I had one school I could drive to, but 5 schools that I supervised, I had to fly to them, Lake Clark, Lake Eliamna.
Wow.
And so I would go down almost, well, not every morning, but maybe at least 3 days out of a 5-day week and fly somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always thought, well, geez, I think I should get my pilot's license. Well, I had one pilot tell me, you would probably kill yourself, Lefevre. You know, you think this is easy. You know, you get in a plane and away we go, but it took a while to get here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my personality, I'm very impulsive. So I probably would have been long gone by now.
Well, I don't know. Maybe my partner, of course, is a pilot. And he was a helicopter pilot, which fits really well with impulsivity.
Ooh.
But he also is a Super Cub pilot. That's what he's a teacher, or a Super Cub teacher now. But he's had his Super Cub for 50 years as of April. And last year he got his 50-year safety certificate from the FAA. So he's he can be impulsive, but he's one of the most careful pilots I've ever flown with.
That's good.
I've gotten selective in who I will fly with.
Yeah. Well, I've never gotten out of a plane, but I have had a couple of times where I didn't get in a plane because of things I had heard about either the pilot or the airline. You know, there were some that had good reputations and others that did not.
Yep.
And still do not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty scary. What was it, Monday, Tuesday? The plane crash that they had here. Yeah. I saw the emergency vehicles go by. I heard the sirens and I saw the vehicles go by, and I'm like, That's not good.
Yeah.
But it was on the other end of the lake and I didn't hear it or see it. I just knew that all of those sirens were never a good sign.
That was my visiting bluebird.
Ah,
Or, yeah. All right. Had an extra attendee today, Kai.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He just flew in. He flew out just now.
I missed that. That sounds like kind of the way my brain works.
mine too.
There you go. There's Ryan. Sorry, I'm having a slow computer morning here that is still trying to catch up with me. I hope everyone's doing well and enjoying this round 2 of our wonderful summer.
Yes.
I am, let's see, now we're getting someplace.
Kai, I have to ask you, is that a photo that in your background, or is that actually in back of you? I see that flip chart every Friday morning.
Yeah, it's actually both. It is, it's my, let me turn off my blur. Where's my video control?
I would think you'd be out at the cabin this kind of weather.
Yeah, well, so anyway, so there's my bookshelf.
Ah, okay.
That's the picture you're seeing, but it's now 90 degrees to where I'm sitting because I'm now oriented so I can look out my window and look
Ah,
at
there you go.
the world out there. And behind me is just the crap in my workshop.
Oh,
So
oh, I'm in love with you, Kai. I love that workshop, man.
yeah, so the picture is almost legit. I'm obviously feeling defensive about it because I'm going to that much trouble to explain that it is kind of real, but it's kind of fake. So anyway, that's the story. It is my bookshelf, and I like it because it's got the combination of the stickies that I've used to try and organize the eclectic collection there by topics, but it's also got lots of startup memorabilia and business stuff on there, and of course flip charts and meeting kind of stuff. So anyway, it's a fun background, just kind of collecting.
And you know where everything is, don't you? You could find it within a nanosecond, whatever you
No,
look.
I'm not one of those guys. I'm actually caught up in the opposite in terms of trying to figure out where my stuff is, especially with the virtualization these days. You know, Ryan knows this really well because he's heard this too often, but I am absolutely amazed at how much, our mental cognitive map of information is getting fragmented as we put stuff into multiple Google Drives and in a Dropbox, and Microsoft's taking over our lives and wants to throw it into OneDrive. And I've got people that message me on Messenger and some on text messaging, and some want to contact me by Slack. Some people will use 2 or 3 different methods, but I can't remember which one they used. So I know that there's a message from, Emily, but I will sit there and start going through 3 or 4 different email accounts trying to find it. And I think, oh, maybe she texted me that time, or maybe it's on Messenger, or maybe it's on a Slack channel. And I think that this, the structure we're going through right now, I think we're in a phase that's really harming, our ability to work collectively and in community. Because everybody's little silo, Microsoft silo and Slack silo and Meta, Facebook silo, they all want us to engage in their silo, and they all want us to kind of stay there. But we've got different people that prefer different, methods of communicating, and they want to use their preferred method. And I think this is hard. There's a great book I read here recently called Stolen Focus. That looks at both the kind of the background and the science of our brains and what's going on, but also kind of looks at the broader trajectory of what's happening and maybe where we need to go in the future. It's a great book if you're interested in this question of human potential and the impact of this fragmentation we're going through right now. So at any rate, when there was a day when all I had was a bookshelf and I had my little 3-ring binders, You know, I was a master at keeping track of my stuff. And right now I can tell you I'm a master at recognizing how messed up my stuff is.
This sounds like a Friday morning support group.
Kind of white padded walls for bouncing around, right? Oh my goodness. So this is just our regular organic Friday kind of stuff. I put out a list of possible things to talk about on there. And I'll let this ruminate as we kind of then go through some quick check-ins with folks here. Taylor had come back and suggested that we really ought to spend maybe a few minutes on the newly released draft comprehensive economic development strategy document that's out. We had looked at it earlier when it was in development, and we had provided some comments on that. And now that the official draft is out there, he felt like it was important for us to potentially revisit that and encourage everybody in this network to look at it. So we could spend a few minutes on that. We've also got the Proposers Day 2. That is something we're trying to host on April 2nd that we could talk a little bit about why that is and what it is and how it fits into the National Science Foundation Proposers Day that's on April 1st, and how it connects up with the EDA follow-on event.
April, Kai, April.
Yeah, wishful thinking, absolutely wishful thinking. Yeah, anything with an A and it was meant to be August. This is next week. So we could touch bases on that EDA, NSF proposers thing that's going on next week if you want. Also got the challenge pitch thing out there on the street trying to get some feedback. I've got some early feedback that's, coming in at this point. And then anything else that's going on is all fair game. But those are kind of top of mind topics. Let me, let that sit for a moment and let's see where folks are at this week in terms of what's new and exciting in your lives and what's on your radar screen for what's next in Alaska. So Dick, you want to say hi and what's going on with you? You'll need to turn the mute off there, friend.
Yeah, there we go. Well, Mary and I were going to go down to Alyeska this morning, but we changed our minds. So I'm out here on the deck.
Oh, no sticky bun for you.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to, chance the traffic down there. I don't like backed up traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to go midweek, maybe a little bit better.
There you go.
We were in Washington and Oregon for Mary's family reunion. The first time they'd gathered in like 30 years. That was great. It's too hot. Glad to be back. And so just getting back in the swing of things. Andy knows fall classes are coming soon. And so getting geared up for a couple of those, couple clients keeping me busy. Other than that, I'm trying to figure out how to clean up my own office and storage units.
That's good. Thanks. Ryan and then Pasquale.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. I'm still finding myself landing a little bit after being out of state. So I went back to visit family in Michigan for about a week. I then took about a week to drive the Alcan and make my way across Canada to get back to Alaska, haul a trailer. And I am also sort of struggling with the merging of all the different things, where's all my stuff at and what am I doing with it? And it's a combination of the stuff in my inbox, the stuff in Slack, the stuff on the different platforms that I'm on. But then it's also this weird temporal merge that's going on of like, I brought a couple boxes of stuff from my childhood back with me in the trailer. And so now I have to go and sort through and like dig through all of this stuff to be like, is this actually important to me? Or did I just think it was important as I was like quickly packing things into the box? And then how do I merge this version of myself from high school with like my high school puffy ski team coat? Like, I'm never going to actually wear that, but I brought it back with me. So like, what do you do with all of this stuff? And how do we as people shift and change? And how do we as a state shift and change? And what does that look like? How do we hold space for each other as we go through these transformations. And I'm just not sure, but I think it looks like a lot of grace and loving kindness, and maybe some help from the Treasury and all the funding that they're sending up here, and all the Infrastructure and Jobs Act funding that's coming up here too. That'll certainly put a little fuel on the fire to get things moving and shaking. So still figuring out how to integrate all of that, but it's been a good week, and I'm happy the sun's shining.
There you go. Glad you're back. Pasquale and then Beth.
Good morning, everybody. This week, well, I was so happy to see that we got that rain, and then what you say, Kai, second summer this year, which is great to finish a lot of projects outside. I think that's something that will always happen. I was told when I came here, I was warned, but I thought didn't make sense that, hey, in summer, you're going to have a conflict between enjoying the outdoors and actually working outside to have things done. So it's a fine balance this year. I found yesterday how much salmon I can eat before my tummy gets full. Some friends went out fishing, brought salmon. Oh my gosh, I had to try it. So I fired up the barbecue, I cooked, and I ate more than I should have, but it was so good. It's amazing how blessed we are with us being able to fish. And about the more related to the agenda that we have, I do agree with Taylor that probably talking about the document will be beneficial for all of us. My note on that will be that if we have not all of us read it, it will probably be a good point to ask everybody to read it and then comment once we have all read it, so we can all provide the same level of input. Otherwise, I feel that some folks that have not read it may feel not knowing exactly what we're talking about. And at the same time, it will give us time to go through some of the items. The document in itself is 158 pages, if I'm not mistaken. Some of that is kind of like filler, so probably content is not as much as that, but it's still good to allow some time for it to read. So that would be my comment on that. I'll pass to the next one.
Cool, thanks. Beth and then Kitty.
Hi, everybody. I am here on my beautiful outdoor deck like Dick because I have, there we go, in Berkeley next to the smokehouse. I'm breathing disgusting hamburger smoke, but there you go. I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to be leaving for vacation next week for 2 weeks. So and I apologize for all the street noise. I am heading back east to see family and reconnect with a lot of friends, and looking forward to not doing anything other than reconnecting. And I've been thinking a lot more about just large systems change, and like what we're trying to do with AKV3, and how more people can do more of that. Like it's that level of work we need at this moment in time. And so I'm excited. I remain excited about this group because currently you're the only group I'm working with that is thinking on this level. And so that's very satisfying. And the models we're using are not well known really with a lot of my OD folks. So it's fun to kind of share the transformative scenario planning and strategic doing with folks. And so yeah, I'm just kind of looking forward to getting out of here. It's been since Christmas, I have not been on a plane. So yeah, so it's nice to see everybody, and I won't be around the next 2 weeks.
Cool, so glad you could join us today. Kitty, and then down to Lean. And I actually don't know, I didn't check it, if Kitty's got her hands full or not. Going once, going twice, maybe we'll come back. She could have her hands full there. Lean, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, no problem. And I apologize. Was there a particular question of the day that we were supposed to be answering?
You know, we've generally kind of it's in the past, sometimes it's been really explicit, but generally we've kind of, you know, gotten to this kind of lazy kind of check in, just what's kind of going on with people, just to be, you know, be connected. But the other has generally been each week to frame it around what's new in terms of your thinking about this next Alaska work that we're doing, something you've seen, an article, a book, something that shows you some indication that we're making some progress towards the next Alaska, or maybe some progress back or not. But it's kind of around this next Alaska ethos of, you know, what's happening is moving us forward, and you're in a really unique place of being able to see this, you know, from a broader lens. So I always appreciate your perspective.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I will say I'm incredibly envious of the salmon that you were talking about earlier. I wish we had fresh salmon in Chicago, but that is not the case. So yeah, this week and kind of forward thinking, just really grateful for all of the folks who have given their time to Generator to talk about how we can better support the ecosystem and play a role in Alaska. I know I've connected with you, Kai, and Beth and I connected just this week, and she gave me some great homework around transformative scenario planning and other things that I look forward to really learning more about, because I think it's really, really incredible work. So that's some of the conversations we've been having in terms of, you know, thinking about the next Alaska and upcoming things. I was not there in person. I attended virtually, so I don't know if you were all in the room, but they hosted an SSBCI investor roundtable with the US Treasury this week, and I had the opportunity to listen in on that. And Linda was present. She's unable to join us today, but she asked some really great questions. And so that's something that I'm really looking forward to hearing, to seeing, you know, what is the state have planned for SSBCI. I know that they're waiting on their application to be approved and then releasing an RFP for fund of fund managers. And so we're going to talk to Mark this afternoon, actually, about potentially collaborating on a pre-seed fund, and then having GBeta provide deal flow for that fund, because we have such great portfolio companies that we're working with that are looking for access to capital. So SSBCI, I think there's a lot we can learn from SSBCI 1.0 to inform 2.0. And then there's also the tribal allocation of SSBCI that they talked about during that conversation as well, which I'm also really interested in learning more about, how we effectively support startups and businesses that are founded by the tribal community. So some of the things that I'm currently thinking of, and just endless gratitude for all of you that have given me some time as an outsider to think about how we can better support the work in Alaska. So thank you.
Great, Lean, thanks. And if you get a chance down the road, I was at the meeting, I was just virtually, I've got 3 potential funds that I'm out dabbling with. And at some point, I'm happy to give away anything and everything to somebody that wants to do more with them. But I've managed one of the 1.0 SSBCI funds here in Alaska. So, you know some of the weeds of that program, but they're always happy to catch up. And we also need to reconnect on Denali Commission at some point soon. So
yeah, and just quickly on that front, with Eric is basically kind of was like, I'll reach out to you again in August about it. And said that, and he's kind of to what you said, he told me to ping him if I didn't hear from him for a couple weeks. So definitely we'll follow up with you when that happens. And then, yeah, happy to chat about SSBCI with anybody. I think, I don't know, that I'd be curious to hear your perspective too. And I don't mean to take up too much time on this meeting, but, you know, the fund size that we could do alone is much smaller than if we were to collaborate with others, right? Because we have to source that one-to-one private investment component. So I don't know right now what generators, you know, if we were to do it alone, which I don't think is of interest, how much we would be able to do. But I certainly think there's opportunity for collaboration there. And we've successfully gotten SSBCI 2.0 funds in Nevada, in Las Vegas and Reno, and then as well as in Nebraska. So have some experience with that now.
nice.
I appreciate it.
Good to know. Okay, thanks. Kitty, I see you there. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for being patient. I was on my phone and it's really hard to maneuver over the mute and everything on and off, so I switched. So yeah, good morning and glad to be back. I've missed a few of these. Been catching some red gold, right? As Pascal said, I've been enjoying salmon twice a day ever since we hit a really good day on the Kenai. And sort of reacquainting myself with what is normal life. And so I'm glad to be sitting here. I'm really glad for the sunshine, so I'm going to be outside as much as I can today. And so in the world of AKV3, I've been catching up by reading and seeing some of the proposals that are going out and the themes. I really appreciate the idea of us dialing into the SEDS, and I'll take a look at that. One of the things that popped up on my radar this week was an old colleague, Ken White, who helped to establish the chaotic commons. He was a good friend of Dee Hock. And Dee Hock wrote The Birth of the Chaotic Age back in the 90s or 2000s. And I forget how I came on it, but I think somebody sent me the original article, which talked about his establishment of Visa. But he's very regenerative, and at that point nobody used that word, but very regenerative and whole living circle principles for establishing a multi-trillion entity. Anyway, his work is fascinating if you've never seen it, and he developed the chaotic principles for organizing. This is another OD method, but it was probably one of the very first that integrated into me, and I wanted to share with you. So he passed away, and Ken reached out to a lot of colleagues who had worked with his stuff, and I still really use and love the work that I gained there. But this quote I thought was super relevant to AKV3: simple, clear purpose and principles give rise to complex and intelligent behavior. Complex rules and regulations give rise to simple and stupid behavior. Sort of fascinating. I mean, and that's the foundation of Visa and other things that we did, which was you really work at the essence of the purpose and principles and allow adaptive change and diversity throughout the sort of participant-led systems. And so he's fascinating, and I encourage anyone who's not heard of Dee Hock. If you want, I will find and post the one little article that was the teaser for me. I'll find it and post it in the chat in a second. So that's what got, and it's just right, it reminds me, gosh, I've been thinking about this stuff and working towards this stuff for decades, and we're never done. But kind of back to the let's strategic doing, iterate, adapt our way into the future. And I love that that's what I see us doing.
Kitty, can you put the quote in the chat too?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That was great.
Okay.
Fascinating. I was trying to Google while you were talking about that. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, he was an amazing man, and but he used biodiversity principles in establishing Visa. I mean, you just would never know it. He was a naturalist at heart. Grew up on a farm. Anyway, I mean, right away through chat. So over to you guys.
Cool. Thanks. And then back around to Andy.
Oh, well, so this morning I did a little bit of a rabbit hole dive into intellectual property policies for universities around patents, not copyrights, but patents, because I was my MBA class came up with a patentable idea this summer, and so now I'm going to go through the process of applying for the patent and all of that. But of course, since it was through a university sponsored course, I needed to see what the policy was, and we don't have one.
You don't.
And so I was looking into it. Hilton and Robert and I are having a conversation about it because we need to address it in the policies. But the conclusion we came to is, if there is any ownership by the university, it spawns a whole bunch of other things that have to happen in the university. So we decided to make a policy right now of the university not having ownership, because it's just too complicated. Too many other things have to happen.
See, Andy
In order
froze.
for the university to participate in anything. So I was reading some. Oh, I have an unstable connection. I'm within like feet of my Wi-Fi, but I still freeze all the
Yeah,
time.
you're back again. Thanks.
Yeah, but anyway, so I was reading a few policies at different universities, and they range from very extreme, like the university owns everything, to it's kind of a sliding scale based on how much of the university resources went into the development of the product. But anyway, it was interesting learning a little bit more about intellectual property. And I wanted to do that simply because I really want to take my classes that direction and try to do more innovation and hopefully come up with other patentable and marketable ideas. So that was kind of interesting. And other than that, I've just been enjoying the weather as well. Very much enjoying wrapping up the semester and looking forward to a couple of weeks of not having to think about school for a little while. I've got a wallpaper project I have to get done during break. So been looking at paint colors and things that I haven't thought about in a very long time. And I am kind of happy about that. And other than that, just continuing to think about on-ramps and silos and complex adaptive systems and, all of the good stuff. So that's about it though for this week.
That's enough for 1 week, isn't it?
That was just this morning for an hour.
There you go. Tip of the iceberg. Well, if I can help with any of the patent stuff, let me know. You may or may not know my last position was the commercialization and technology officer for the University of Alaska. So I've spent all sorts of time dealing with the issues around who and when different policies might apply to the ownership of intellectual property created within the university system, both in the academic setting and the administrative and non-academic staff settings and research areas. So lots of work there.
Definitely will be reaching out to you because I've never applied for a patent before.
Yeah.
And this will be at first. And, APU is not a research university.
Yeah.
We just don't have that mechanism. So
no, but it should be, by all rights, as productive as any university in terms of student and faculty innovation. Just because it's not a tier 1 kind of big deal university doesn't mean that the ethos shouldn't be the creativity leading to innovation, leading to, in some cases, the capture of that for, the benefit of some of those rights that are in there. But it is complex. The other thing I was going to mention is Mark Billingsley, who's kind of, intersects with our group on and off over time. And I know Lean is probably working with Mark up in Fairbanks, but he's one of just a couple of the patent attorneys that we have in the state. And he's the director of the Office of Intellectual Property and Commercialization at UAF up there. And he's super available. If at some point you want somebody who's lived and breathed this work, you'd find him approachable in terms of giving you, a little bit of a high level. And then the AUTUM organization is the Association of University Technology Managers or something like that. That's kind of the gold standard organization to look to in terms of a nationwide network of people that are doing this work. So at any rate, happy to do that. And of course, the Board of Regents policies are pretty good in this area and available. You can just download all those, and you could download the UA Board of Regents policy on intellectual property thought and immediately have a boilerplate to start with.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and when it comes to funding, I'm gonna be looking to prototype, so I'll be needing some funds to help work with that. So
sounds great. We used to have the Alaska Seed Fund that was for prototyping type work, and we need to get that going again. That's a long story. So let's see real quickly on my front here. I am reading this book that you can't see. Oh, there it is for just a second. Community by Peter Block. And Beth and Kitty are going to be going, no kidding, it's about friggin' time, right? So, all of this work that we've been doing, for, the last 2 years now, all roads, lead to a couple common directions. John Hagel, Ed Morrison, Cooper Ryder, David Cooper Ryder, and Peter Block is another one of those guys. If you're going to build a couple of the foundational cornerstones of this work, Peter's one of the guys, and I've known it, and I've seen some of his videos and paid attention to him, and had what I thought was kind of a superficial understanding of his work, but was going beyond that. At any rate, I would recommend this book at this point. I'm only into the beginning of it. It's a community. This is a recently revised version that he did just a few years ago, so it's actually relatively contemporary. And one of the reasons I had stayed away from it originally was it was work that originally came out of stuff that he had published a while ago, and so I was looking for more contemporary stuff, but this is now 2018, this version, and he's tuned it up, and the language in here and the issues and the examples that he's using are quite relevant to what we're doing. And you'll find out that so many of the issues that we're touching on in terms of the importance of creating an opportunity type narrative are so important in terms of being able to create the potential of a community. But what he's really getting at here is he's going down, a level in what we're doing, because most of our work has been touching a little bit more on community and economic development and the manifestations of that. And what he's doing is kind of taking everyone back a step, saying that all of the work that you could do to optimize individual performance, optimize corporate performance, optimize a city's economic performance doesn't do anything to actually create the foundation of community and connections that actually do the real work. And that as long as we're simply working on trying to optimize everybody's individual performance, we will leave the whole community still struggling with these, ongoing endemic problems like housing, homelessness, and people that are being left behind from it. So he's encouraging people to look a little more carefully at what you're actually trying to do when we build community and connect people. And I know Beth or Kitty could probably do a far better job than I'm trying to do in terms of introducing this, but I do want to recommend it to folks. And Beth or Kitty, if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I actually wrote a book report for Fritjof Capra on this book. So I am happy on the original version. And so I'm very happy to share that with all of you. It's just a 5-page summary of the original book with a lot of the provocative questions at the end. And we used his work as well, a lot of his provocative questions in the prisons that we worked in. And I would say that the one thing Fritjof mentioned when he read it was, when he read my report was, or my summary was that, and I don't know if he does this in the new version, Kai, is to talk about ecosystems, because he talks a lot about the systems around us, a lot of the systems are institutional systems, political systems, whatever, but he left out ecosystems. So I'd be interested in reading the new version and see if that gets addressed. But I think the relevance of his work is that he has a model for and I think this can be woven into our design, Kai, for having the conversations, right? He has a model for how to have the conversations that build accountability and commitment that bring community together. And that's the essence of it's how to have the conversations. What are the questions to ask? What are, knocking down the silos, creating more horizontal leadership, service, he goes into all of that. So I will be happy when this meeting is over to just send my 5-page summary of the original book, which doesn't mean you shouldn't read the new book. Because I remember reading that book years ago, the first version, and we read it, I think, during grad school, Kitty. And I just remember trying to take notes while I was driving my car. I was listening to it and I was so intrigued, like I didn't want to, and then I ended up writing a summary. So you're all happy to share that. And I just think it's more embedded in the work we want to do, Kai. Like it's the granularity of the conversations. That's where this really could come in handy. Anyway.
Yeah, like Beth, I read it on an airplane to Kotzebue, where we were working on the Arctic Economic Development Summits with the regional regions of North Slope and Northwest Arctic, which was thesis. And I, like you, I was like trying to, I was like, ooh, ah, at strangers in the airplane. It just grabbed me. It was very, very powerful. And this was in the early 2000s. I put something in the chat there because we had a really in-depth closing conversation about trust a few weeks back that really, really struck a chord with me. And I feel like it could be one of the fundamental underlying barriers to us truly progressing at pace. And I remember that Peter had this short article I put in there. I haven't reread the article right now to see if it's exactly pertinent, but I think we need to have conversations about trust in our sphere of economic and social regenerative forward thinking. Third thing to add, Ariel, who helped with Beth to produce some of our dialogue frameworks, she is certified and trained and delivers the conversational methodology outlined in that book. It's called The 6 Conversations. And so she wove that in. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I went to Beth and Ariel, because they were maybe not familiar with transformative scenario planning or strategic doing, but they really knew this stuff. And Ariel really wove it into the model of our dialogue. You have to create relationship. And to Ryan's point, when I went into Leadership Anchorage, I made it required reading, and it stuck. So everybody who's been there since me has read this book. The way I describe it is you really need to fall in love and become human to human with the other, and then virtually amazing things are possible. But until you get past the you're a transaction, you're the entity you work for, I have to have my barriers up. You have to hear the human story, like appreciative inquiry, but with the thing he doesn't do, as I've always said, is it's all about foundation with Peter. Strategic doing is what moves it. So it's the marriage of those two as much as anything else that I believe is what we need. End of preaching for the moment.
Well, I'm just appreciating that there's kind of a thread here, and I'm thinking about, creating a book list or something. And if folks want to read this, we can have a book discussion on it too. But, there's a set of dots here that I've been mentally learning about and trying to integrate, which, includes Peter Block, which is this foundation we're talking about. And then there's Cooper Ryder with appreciative inquiry, in terms of how do you engage people with that positive mindset. And those two overlap a lot in terms of this idea of possibility as opposed to problem. And then you move into the work of Morrison, which is trying to teach us, well, now how do we activate people to take action and build more trust through the work that they do, that then reinforces the ability to work on more complex problems. And these pieces begin fitting together with that. And then of course there's Kahani with the transformative scenario planning that helps build that pathway to being able to see what are the possibilities, so that you can understand what are the critical uncertainties. And by understanding the critical uncertainties, you begin to appreciate the possibilities and the scenarios. And that then builds you into Hegel, which begins to be, giving you this foundation for then taking those scenarios and building those into, again, another focus on the passion of the explorer and the learning platforms. And these pieces all begin fitting together. And I feel like a lot of the work that we've done has been trying to get to the point where we as a group kind of begin to understand the potential of putting this together, but more particularly turning it into something we can actually take out and engage people on, and move past the books and move past the good ideas and move into community action, which is why I'm so excited about both this Denali Commission project that's essentially paying us to go out into some communities to start doing this, and now this work with University of Alaska Southeast and the National Science Foundation scenario planning that's there. And there's more projects coming along where the world is hungry for this stuff, and they're hungry for how do we do it, but more importantly, how do we do it in a way that has ongoing value and connection to community, as opposed to just kind of a one-hit wonder and then we're off to the next good idea. So anyway,
I have a quick idea on that. would it be possible to have, I love what you're doing, which is trying to connect the dots. Would it be possible to have a group meeting and just have a facility, like a brainstorm around how we can actually do that? Like for all of us to be part of looking at how the dots connect and kind of integrating it a little bit more into our thinking. So all the things you just mentioned, you know, Peter's stuff, David's AI, strategic doing, transformative scenario planning, all of that, and Hagel's work, like having a conversation. I haven't read Hagel's stuff yet, but having a conversation about how we see it all fitting together and maybe diagramming it somehow. Just a thought.
I think it'd be a lovely one. I would appreciate the mind meld on these different topics, because I think it's a really important fabric for us to be able to weave together, and this group in particular, all kind of being on mostly kind of the same page, but also seeing all the different diverse experiences and perspectives that we bring into how to see a richer understanding of these pieces. So I think that would be great to try and build that
Maybe
out.
even come up with like a simple model that integrates all of them together. Some visual almost.
Yeah, visual would be helpful, because a lot of what Ariel did with the impact dialogues is integrating. She's basically got AI in there, and it sounds like she's got some of these 6 conversations in there, but we particularly focused in on the Kahani, the transformative scenario planning, and the connection into strategic doing. I mean, so there's a couple of pieces in there, and I suspect that if we brought her back into this conversation, we'd probably find out that there's more of these pieces in there than we even recognize. Because she's got this deeper background that probably built some of that in there without being explicit about where it's at. But
I think as long as we're really getting into this, we should do a Vulcan mind melt. What do you think, Beth? Think that would work? Yeah, there you go. I like it. Seriously, though, it's great.
yeah, we'll see if we can do that. And particularly, it'd be nice to be able to do it when Beth, you're back, and when Ariel's available, because I suspect that she might enjoy and be able to contribute a lot to that discussion also. So let me kind of work on scheduling something out in a couple of weeks for a time when most of us are all back, and we can find a critical mass of time to dive into that.
When does summering officially end in Alaska? Just curious. Is it like September, October, August? Is there
there's a transition. I mean, there's kind of the everybody kind of goes back to school and starts getting serious about their work again in early September. So basically after Labor Day. But we're right in the middle of the peak of the red salmon, fisheries, and then we move into some silver salmon, and there's a little bit of a window in September before we move into hunting season when everyone wants to go hunting. And and the reality is, and I ran into this a few years ago, everyone will tell you you can't do anything in the summertime because everyone is off doing stuff. Well, the reality is that that's true for some folks, but most of the folks are actually still here working. And so when we originally were talking about doing a startup weekend in the summer, it's kind of like, there's no way you can do a startup weekend in the summer. No one's around. Well, it turned out we had great startup weekends, because as much as we'll use the excuse that it's summer in Alaska, the reality is most people are still here living their lives and doing their stuff. And as I like to joke, startups don't take the summers off. You can't shut down for a summer if you're a startup organization. So at any rate, there is a really strong cycle here in Alaska, and that is everybody kind of mentally goes back to work in September. And there's a pretty strong push through September until April when breakup happens, and then it begins to fray as people begin to lose focus. And as you move into May, people start going into a different mindset. It's kind of like if you're in Hawaii, when the surf's up, the businesses are closed. And in Alaska, when the fish are running, the businesses are closed. It's kind of that ethos. But at any rate, and that's why with Alaska version 3, for example, we created our fiscal year is July to June, because that way, from a fiscal business management standpoint, we basically are wrapping around the cycle of activity, because by the time you get to the end of June, everything's kind of wrapping up. And it's certainly driven by the university schedule to a large degree, because the university academic calendar drives a lot of this, and the university students and the faculty that are involved in programs there are really essential to a lot of the innovation programs, which is central to a lot of our work.
Yeah, for me, the seasons, summer is officially at an end once we hit the rain, and that usually happens about the time that the state fair happens.
Yeah.
And usually about March or so, it feels like the curtains have been ripped back and the lights coming back again. And by April, when we're into breakup, that's when it really starts to become hard to focus because you're starting to see some green and the trails are opening up again. But yeah, there's generally some folks that are around in the summer to keep things moving forward. Something that I was connecting, another dot that's out there as part of the SSBCI funding, they've got some set aside that's available for technical support. And what I'm wondering is these models that we're looking at and these different tools that they have, how could we explain the value of these and how it then gets applied? And I think that there's an interesting pathway or progression from just kind of like building general alignment with some of the stuff with TSP and with Peter Block and appreciative inquiry. And then we step into some more action-oriented stuff with strategic doing. And then that could lead very nicely into like actually launching some different things. We'll have some real projects and stuff that spin out of that. And I've always thought that there's kind of some different pathways at that point that you could take that, maybe it looks like a typical business. Maybe it looks like a startup. Maybe it looks like a social impact focused organization, and those lines can blur some. But helping to frame for folks, here's this process that Alaska version 3 works with and the folks that we work with use. Here's kind of this toolkit that we pull from. And then here's how it could match up with the work that you're trying to do in your community or the organizations that you're trying to invest in. Could we help to really highlight some key opportunities that the Department of Treasury would like to see some funding roll into?
So I would say, and I agree with all of that, and I think it just supports continuing to do this. But one of the things that ties into this is I also want to engage with some of this by just doing some of it. And Rebecca over at the Seed Lab has responded favorably to us maybe doing some sort of pilot type meetings over at Seed Lab. And I'd love to take what might be the meetings that we're anticipating with the Denali contract and the impact dialogues and trying to find the band of the few and the willing that want to sit down for an afternoon and walk through, how this outline works. And in particular, apply it to perhaps a climate change topic as a way to kind of walk through that challenge for Alaska, the scenarios that we might look at in terms of climate change impacts on Alaska, and then moving into the opportunities that come from that and maybe some projects and basically just prototype this process. We tried doing that at the Innovation Summit, and I think we got a little bit of experience, but my main takeaway was 90 minutes just doesn't work. And if you're going to do this kind of stuff, so what I'm thinking about is doing something at the Seed Lab that might be an afternoon to be able to play around with these ideas, and maybe we make it somewhat interesting also in terms of unwrapping a little bit of what's behind this. But I want to try and actually engage and do some of this as opposed to talk about it forever in that vein. So I haven't tried scheduling anything with her, but that's out there. And Ryan, if you're intersecting with Rebecca, that's something I want to try and figure out how to do. And we could pick any number of topics. We could pick homelessness. That's a good one. Food systems or climate change. So wrapping up for a second, and I want to jump over to SEDS before we wrap up here. Is there anybody in particular that wants to try and organize this group meeting, integrate, connect all the dots on that? I'm happy to work on it, but I realize I usually jump in too fast, too quickly on volunteering to do too much. And I would love if there's somebody that's really interested and motivated on this who wants to try and organize this to jump in and do that.
I'd be willing to do it with a couple of other people. Like maybe we can grab Ariel, maybe Kitty or Ryan, or, I think it's just, yeah, I'd be happy to do some design around it, but would love some other brains.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have to be like, I'm gonna be checked out. So probably end of August, like we could do it sometime in mid-August to the end of August and maybe early September.
Yeah, exactly. No, I would assume.
But I'd love some partners on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be up for helping out with some of the coordination and maybe doing some of the documentation or making some artifacts afterwards to sort of capture and share what came out of it. But I'd love for your experience to be in the room and really kind of making sure stuff is structured up right.
Kitty, would you be up for a brain? Okay, and I'll check in with Ariel. Kai.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, if you could, if you do this one little step, if you could check in with her and come back to me and copy Ryan also on some possible good dates that work for the two of you.
Yeah, I think we can get together and do the brainstorm, and then we can get together and brainstorm how we want to do it and then do it.
Yes,
right?
and that's and
Yeah.
dates. That's what I'm talking about. It's just
Yeah.
when you're back, when Ariel's back, when there's a little convenient window, when you guys
Okay.
are available to have that conversation about how we would do what's next, as opposed to the dates for the actual thing.
Okay,
Great.
cool. Be fun.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get this in at the beginning of the wake up season, back to our earlier conversation. Because if you wait a little longer, everybody's consumed by conference season.
Yep.
So yeah, if we could get it soon after Labor Day for the event where we invite people. And I think I'm ahead of the game on the brainstorming, but let's pick a theme where there are horses ready at the gate to run. If you know what I mean. So because we want to make sure we get, I think our best prototype will be if we can really be confident that we can attract the diverse stakeholders that we need.
Right.
Okay, and I think there's, in my mind, there's two things that are overlapping here, and I want to kind of pull them back apart for a second to be clear. I think there is one thing we were talking about doing, which is creating an opportunity to come together to work on how these different bodies of work and techniques fit together. Block, Cooper Ryder, Hagel, Morris, and Kahani. There's a second piece that to me is separate, but fits, almost bolts together, which is this prototyping activity with the impact dialogues. And to me, those are kind of two complementary, but they're two different events, I think.
Right, and sequentially we do the first one first, and we can do the first one virtually, but the second one's going to need to be live.
Yes, okay, good. So what we're going to be doing then, I guess, is for the moment working on a planning meeting that would be potentially looking at both, but it's trying, the focus is particularly with Ariel and you guys is how do these different techniques and bodies of knowledge fit together?
Yeah, I see it as integration, tuning in again to our model, making sure we're aware of it, and selecting our strategy to execute. That's the first meeting. And I do think we need 90 minutes at least.
I think we should.
And we should do some pre-reading, not so much the books, but the impact dialogue model, like refresh ourselves on what did that first approach of integration look like?
Yeah.
Because the second one is us doing it live with guests, with community members.
And that's then when the theme comes in as a theme.
Correct.
Second meeting. That's what I was.
Yeah.
And for the actual activity, we invite whoever wants to come and encourage
exactly
the diverse members of our group to join. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would love to see a primer of some sort come out of that first meeting. If we can lay out the model and maybe pull out some of the highlights for what each of these frameworks uses, it would be really cool to have a tool or a one sheet or a little booklet or something to be able to then hand to the folks who are then going through the prototype dialogue to say, here's what we're going through, here's what our framing is, here's some reference material if you want to dig and prepare a little bit deeper, and then use that to prime those conversations.
We can look and see if there's, we got the Peter Block one. There's pretty good stuff on AI, and I'm sure we can come up with summaries of things.
Yeah, we can have some links, but we're close with what Ariel has already done is create a synopsis of the integration.
Yes.
That's the distinctly new product.
Yes.
Yeah, my own view of this is I don't think anything about this in my mind is redesigning anything about the impact dialogue. I think it is refining our understanding of the pieces of that and some of the delivery of how those dialogues are done, but some of the foundations that are hiding in there. But I think the basic design that's there is still the thing to prototype, but being able to understand the subtleties.
It's the integration of these things. And then I would love to see an outcome be a visual model.
Yeah.
Like we have taken all this cool stuff and we have found a way to visually represent how it all works together, which personally for me is a lot easier than reading words.
Yeah, well, and I would say, you know, from my stuff where I intersect with a lot of people in a lot of places, nobody's done this that I've run into. Now, I have to believe that any idea I come up with is, you know, has already been done 10 times. I believe that. But it continues to surprise me that, you know, when it comes up to the discussion about how do you go from AI to transformative scenario planning to strategic, nobody's kind of mapped that out.
Right.
And seeing that it is a necessary mapping for assessment of readiness to know where to start. And you've got lots of different programs that are all good, but you've got to figure out where to start, and everybody's carrying around a hammer. So, you know, everything looks like a nail that fits their particular piece of the puzzle. And what we've done is kind of reached across a set of tools to be able to do that. And I think come up with some rules on how do you figure out where to start and when.
One more comment, and I know we've filled so much of the day with this, but I'm excited that we're thinking again about the reverse pitch. And of course, there are the upcoming dialogues with the Denali Commission and NSF. I think that us bringing this top of mind and integrating it will help us apply to BHOC's quote, you know, simple principle and purpose to complex and intelligent behavior. So I think it will carry forward into these things that are happening in the near term. We didn't talk about your August 1st and 2nd deadlines though, and I'm conscious of how soon that's coming around the corner. Do you want to touch on that before we wrap up?
So yeah, let me try and wrap up with the 2 minutes that are left here with a couple of things. So one is the link to the SEDS is in our notes document. I'll put it in the chat here. Let's plan on encouraging folks, and I'll put a follow-up message to everybody. Let's encourage folks to try to the degree you want to read this before next week. And so that next week we will come back to the SEDS document and maybe try and collect comments and just explore it a little bit more with Pasquale's suggestion that we be a little more familiar with before diving in, so that for folks that want to. And I will stay away from biasing you on the document. I'll just ask you to read it, but I will come loaded with ammunition next week on that. Second is the National Science Foundation concept proposal that we put in, which essentially is to scale up doing these impact dialogue, this work, as well as some of the other innovation ecosystem work, was accepted. Although I think everybody got accepted, so I'm proud of that. But not my ego isn't getting stoked by what a crappy job I did, but I got it in. But at any rate, so on the 1st in the morning, there's a proposers day, and this is a national day for all of the people that were accepted to come together. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to build in more collaborations across all of the individual proposers. And I think this is incredible to see the federal government realizing that their grant system in the past has been designed in a way to create lots of silos. Everybody does their own proposal. It's a zero-sum game. You know, if I get the grant, that someone else doesn't get the grant because Alaska only gets one grant on, you know, and they get into that kind of thinking. No one wants to share anything they're doing. Well, they're beginning to realize the unintended consequence of their systems. So with this approach they're doing, all of the concept proposals are now going to be publicly sourced. We all had to agree when we submitted that we would allow our concept proposal to be publicly shared. So on Monday, everybody gets to see everybody's concept proposals, and they want to see local regional groups get together and figure out how to work together. And so if anybody wants to go to this thing, let me know. I'll give you the log-on information for AKV3 to be able to sign up and participate as part of our team and be able to play in this arena. And then what I've proposed is a redo to what we did for Startup Week, where AKV3 with JEDC brought together all of the EDA submitters for the Build Back Better. And we had a day where we shared all of the 13 proposals and got everyone on the same page. And it worked out perfectly because we had 2 of the folks that were rejected under phase one met at that meeting with the other folks that ended up being accepted for phase two, and they got their programs moved over and bolted into the phase two proposals. At any rate, I've been inviting all of the folks that were involved in the EDA Build Back Better, Good Jobs Challenge and Build to Scale to come on a day two event that I'm holding on the 2nd at 10 o'clock to explore how do we in Alaska integrate and collaborate on these proposals and try and figure out what's going on next with that. So that's happening at 10 a.m. on the 2nd. I'd be happy to share information on that. And then the 3rd is I just got a notice yesterday that the EDA is now thinking the same way we are, and they're holding something on the 3rd, which is a mashup of the previous EDA applicants and the engines opportunity. So it's interesting to see this nexus of stuff going on, but I'll leave it at that for now. So, yeah, if anyone needs any of that information, let me know, but that's what's cooking. Otherwise, next week we'll do some more on SEDS, and Beth will circle around if you can help with nailing down a good time with Ariel to be able to get together when you get back from vacation. I hope you have a great time. All right, we'll see y'all.